Well, our senior international editor, Doug Herbert, joins me now. Doug, this has been an election unlike any other with less choice and growing apathy.
Yeah, it really has, because look, what have we had in Iran over the past, really since the 1979 Islamic Revolution? You had a two-track system, in a sense. On the one hand, you had an elected president with not just a semblance, but in many of these elections, a real viable choice between candidates from a wide spectrum of competing political ideologies and factions. And that has been more or less the case, really up until now. And then alongside that, you have had the theological part, the Islamic Revolution part, which is a hardline clerical establishment, the leadership, in a sense, presided over by the supreme leader, in this case Khamenei, who really holds the paramount power in the land, the political and all other power, has the final say, so to speak. But you've had this two-track system where the clerics have essentially acquiesced in this democratic exercise of electing a president every 4 years. And there have been a host of presidents, from moderate to even reformist factions, often who really were up against it with the hardline clerics and had a lot of difficulty getting their will done. Including the outgoing president now, Rouhani. So what you have here right now is really a confirmation of perhaps a trend that we've been seeing with the crackdown on protests in the past few years, which is not just the rise and the resurgence of, but the really entrenchment of the hardliners in Iran, at least for the near term, if not the medium term, in holding really a monopoly over the political power. It's always been there de facto because of the supreme leader, Wasim. But now what you have is, because you have the election of a hardline president who really wears the turban that suggests that he sees himself as a descendant of the prophet, there is no trying to gloss over the fact now of who is really in control in Iran.
Yeah, as you mentioned, results are still coming in, but if this is confirmed, you've said it, this is an ultra-conservative candidate. He's a favorite of the hardline clerics. What would this mean for the country's relationship with the rest of the world and the West in particular?
Yeah. Look, the oversimplified response, and usually that's what happens to be the wrong response, and the one that's easy to sort of speculate about is say, well, you now have a hardliner in power, an ultra-conservative, beloved by the hardline clerical establishment. The hardline clerical establishment has been tooth and nail opposed to the nuclear deal. Almost the overwhelming majority of them have really gone out of their way to try to thwart it in many ways. So the logical conclusion, if you're to oversimplify, would say, well, there goes any hopes of salvaging that nuclear deal. Remember, the talks are now in advanced stages, still ongoing in Vienna, Austria. And there's been hopes in recent weeks that perhaps they really will be able to salvage something, that 2015 deal, which was abandoned by Donald Trump. But here's the paradox and why it's oversimplified. The very fact that he is a hardliner, an ultra-conservative, that he has the backing of the clerics, maybe he, if he actually wants to salvage the deal, has a better chance of making the case to them. That is, having a hardliner in power, even though technically should be opposed to the deal, also could bring more influence to bear on the very elements who would oppose that deal. So I'm not sitting on the fence, but what I'm saying is we really have to get to know him better to see how he governs and whether or not he might calculate it's in his interest to perhaps make the case for the deal, because not being in the deal could have further already awful economic repercussions, but could really further have dire consequences for Iran's economy.